Welcome back to the Performance Mindset Show. I'm your host, Amy Calandrino, commercial real estate advisor, investor, and author. Each week, I talk with inspiring leaders and entrepreneurs about the habits, decisions, and strategies that fuel growth and lasting success. If you're ready to think bigger, build smarter, and strengthen your performance mindset, you're in the right place. Today, I have with me Rajan Joshi, and he is the founding attorney of the Joshi Law Firm, where he leads one of Central Florida's most respected criminal defense teams, representing clients in state and federal cases with fierce commitment to advocacy and justice. He's built a career on discipline, resilience, and excellence. Qualities shaped not just in the courtroom, but through his personal journey in fitness and sobriety. Rajan is also known for his daily messages of encouragement and accountability on social media, which have inspired thousands, including myself, to show up with intention. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure. Thank you for your very kind introduction.
Well, I'd have to say that I can count on you each day when I get up to have some inspiring message. And I'm like, oh, that's exactly what I needed to hear today. So your positivity, your mindset, your work, and your vulnerability, and how fiercely you advocate for your clients is why I wanted to have you on the show.
Thank you. It's my honor to be on here. Thank you.
Yeah. So for someone who's hearing from you for the first time, how would you describe the kind of law that you practice and the clients that you serve?
Well, my law firm, Joshi Law, is a full-service criminal defense law firm. We handle every type of case, from the smallest misdemeanors to the hugest felonies. I mean, we handle first-degree murders, we handle racketeering cases, we handle cases in state and federal court. I'd like to think of us as the law firm that really, really aggressively advocates for the clients. We're the law firm. I mean, honestly, you see on TV that I have 6 attorneys at my firm, very diverse, and people who want to go out and fight for their clients. We're not a law firm that just takes a case and pleads the case out for the first offer that's there. We dissect the cases, we do the work, we file the motions, we go to trial, we'll do the depositions, and we're going to work to get the best result for our clients. And it's not just our clients that we're fighting for. We advocate our own reputation. We take pride in our results. And so, I work with some of the most skilled attorneys. The attorneys at my firm are vetted very, very carefully. They're the most highest achieving lawyers. They're lawyers who have won multiple trials, and they're down to earth people. My whole staff is. I work with very talented people, and everyone at my firm is down to earth and treats the clients like family when they come to us. And we take pride in that. We're the law firm that will return phone calls. We're the law firm that will, keep our clients updated. And, we enjoy winning, and we do it so often. I'll say that very humbly, but very honestly.
Hey, it's okay when you have the results behind you to, it's just a fact,
It's the work ethic and discipline as
Yeah.
well, so
Yeah.
that's.
Well, I think though too, and from my perspective, like having hired people, it is hard to find those right people to add onto your team. And that takes a lot of discipline and perseverance, not to just settle and to have the right people, because it's an extension of the brand and your reputation.
That's so true. And the word you use is settle. I will not settle. I will only work with the most talented people. And I've had people who have come to my law firm and just weren't a good fit. Nothing personal. I wish them all the best, but they either didn't have the work ethic, they didn't have the discipline, they didn't have the intelligence, or, they were lazy. And, I can only work around a certain type of people. And the people I work with now, they make coming to work so much fun. They're hardworking. We have fun at my law firm. And, we have a cohesive atmosphere, which is very inviting to the clients, and they can feel it when they come in.
Right.
They see everyone over here so relaxed, and it's very important, because I think in life, one of the most important things is who you surround yourself with. I've sometimes given people pass, and they come in with a negative attitude, and that spreads real quick. and it's not conductive.
Right. Well, and you can't make people care if they just don't care. And if you and your team truly care about those that you're helping, it people can feel that. People know when you're not being genuine.
That is so true. And I think you made a very good point. You can't change people, you know.
Right.
All you can do is change your own reaction. So I used to try to, spend my time, spend my efforts trying to motivate people who just weren't there, or trying to get people to be positive who weren't there. And then I realized, why not just have people who are like that
Right.
to begin with,
Right.
because there's so many people out there, and some people want to come to my law firm and work. I have a lot of people who come and just want to volunteer their time just because they want to be there. And
Right.
all those people I've ended up hiring because I can tell that they're hardworking and stuff. But if somebody's coming in and feeling entitled or complaining and stuff, then this it's not a good fit. And
Right.
nothing personal. But like you said, you can't change people.
And they're taking up a spot on your bench. Like I always think of it like a sports team is like they're taking up a spot on the bench if they don't have the right skills for you guys to win. So
Yeah, but I'm very blessed. And, this is like, I've had my business now for 10 years. And,
10 years,
one
happy
thing,
10 years.
one thing with owning a business is, any setbacks is a learning experience.
Yes.
So, I've gone through a lot of learning experiences, but I will say this right now, I'm the most happiest with my law firm today than I've ever been in 10 years. And I've had some great people at my law firm, don't get me wrong. And I've had, some great times. But right now, I really do enjoy the people who I work with. I enjoy the atmosphere we create, and I enjoy the results we get.
That's incredible. So you obviously handle serious high stakes cases. What originally led you into criminal defense?
Well, when it was a passion of mine. I used to watch people on TV and be like, "Oh man, I want to do that." When I saw the O.J. Simpson trial, I saw the lawyers over there. I was like, "That's what I want to be like." They were very sharp, very intelligent. They were high profile attorneys,
Yeah.
and that kind of attracted me. When I was in law school, I did very well, modestly speaking, and I was among the top of my class, and I was getting all these I was getting all these interviews, not offers, from these top law firms, which were paying an extraordinary amount of money back then, 25 years ago. And my heart was going into the prosecution, which would give me experience to be a criminal defense lawyer, but it was only paying like $30,000, and these ones were paying like six figures. So I started interviewing with all those firms because that was the push that the law school pushed us towards. And I had so many interviews, and I was thinking about, man, if I get a job, I might take it because of the money, even though my heart wasn't in it. And I got rejected from every single law firm I applied to in law school, every single one of them, stacks of rejection letters, and it was disheartening because I was watching other people get all these jobs, and they're talking about buying a condo, and I went and I got the job for $33,000 starting out as a prosecutor, and I worked like crazy. I loved the job. There was never a day I had to work. I worked for over there for 4 years. I'd work on Saturday nights getting ready for a trial, and I tried so many cases. I ended up trying the most cases in the entire circuit, which is three separate counties than any
Wow.
prosecutor in the year 2003, and I won every one of those trials. And these were high stake trials.
Holy
Um,
crap.
and so I got that experience. And as soon as my commitment for 4 years was up, I went into a private practice. I went into criminal defense. And I look back and think, I'm so glad with all those rejections I got. Because, if I would have gotten one of those jobs, I don't know, I may have taken it and my life would be so different right now. I wouldn't have the career I have.
It is interesting how life kind of leads you in a particular way, and you have to be just aware enough to go with it. But, despite whatever your paycheck was, you really just kind of threw yourself into it and made the most of that experience, which kind of set the tone for your continuation of your career.
Yeah, I believe that, a lot of times other people's rejection is God's protection. And, I really feel that, that I was guided in the right direction and stuff. And I couldn't be happier.
Wow, that's amazing. And then I feel like criminal defense requires a lot of courage, clarity, and empathy. What part of the work means the most to you?
The part of the work that means the most to me, honestly, is I keep the government in check. I keep the police officers in check. When the police officers step out of line, and they know that they're going up against me, they're going to feel it. A lot of times police officers think they can violate people's rights, push their weight around because the person's just going to get an overworked court-appointed attorney or hire an attorney who's lazy and just going to plea them out at the first hearing they get and be done with it, and the police never have to see it. But when they step out of line and I'm the attorney or someone at my firm's is representing those clients, we are going to yank those officers into a deposition. We're going to interrogate them, crucify their investigation, crucify all the mistakes they made, all the rights they violated. And, they're not going to look so tough because the police look tough on, outside on the streets. But when they are sitting across from me in a deposition or I got them on the witness stand, they don't look so tough anymore. I promise you that.
Well, at the end of the day, police officers are just people, and you take a police department, you're going to have a cross section of society, and you're going to have some that perhaps want to go on power trips and, others that, play by the rules, and you have to kind of dissect and figure out where it all lays out.
Yeah, and I'll say this: I respect the job the police do. I have a lot of friends who are police officers. I was a former prosecutor. I worked very closely with the police. I respect the job they do. I've represented a lot of police officers, including the police chief in a certain agency. And most police officers are good, but there are some bad police officers right there. I'm dealing with a case right now where it's absolute police brutality. And, I'm going to make sure those police officers are held accountable for what they did to my client and what they did to a lot of other people, that evening.
Yeah. What's something about your job that people would be surprised to learn?
Well, I would. That's a good question.
Isn't it?
Something that they would be surprised to learn. I think how much goes into the front end. If a person hires an attorney relatively soon when there is an investigation going on, I've killed a lot of cases, state and federal, where somebody got me involved, before they were arrested. They knew they were being investigated. And instead of putting their head in the sand, they went out and got an attorney. And a lot of times we can make a huge difference pre-arrest. And, I'll go to a party sometimes and I'll see a lot of people I know and they'll be coming up to me and they were my client for this charge. Another one was my client for this charge. Another one was my client. I'll be talking to them. No one will ever know and stuff. And it just dawns on me. I was like, oh, wait a minute, this guy avoided this and stuff. And a lot of times people have avoided, some real serious pitfalls because the case was handled, appropriately and professionally in the beginning.
Well, it's people's lives in the balance, and if they're being wrongfully charged, it's important to have folks like you around.
That's so true. That's so
in check. So
that's so true. And sometimes good people make bad decisions, and there's ways around it. Let's just say somebody was embezzling money and stuff, and we could have them pay it back ahead of time versus getting arrested, getting indicted, going to court, and all that stuff. There are ways to do it if. Not always, but, sometimes you can avoid the arrest altogether.
Yeah. So let's talk about, I feel like you were able to operate at a much higher level just because of the amount of energy you put into your fitness journey. What role does fitness play in your life? And how does it help you in the way that you show up for your clients?
I'd say fitness is a huge part of my life.
Yeah.
I mean, I started working out when I was 12. And at that time I was really focused on it. My life in high school was all the gym. I worked at a gym, and throughout my life, that's been a very, very strong motivating factor in everything I do. The discipline I learned from working out, eating healthy, I use in every aspect of my life. I used it to when I got into college. I started studying law school. I ended up scoring top 5 in the Florida bar exam, because I had that same discipline. My goal wasn't just to pass, it was to be the best I can be. Today, I'm 51 years old. I walk around, modestly speaking, under 10% body fat year round. I wake up at 4:30 just about every morning before 5. And I'm at the gym latest 5:30, 5:45. I work out for 2 hours. I'll do, weights, and then I'll do 45 minutes to an hour of cardio. And I do that every single day. I'll take Sundays off. All my meals are prepped. I don't eat sugar. I don't drink alcohol. I don't eat junk food. I don't cheat on my diet. Everything is packed and weighed. And at 51, I feel like I'm 21. Because of the lifestyle I live, and I don't introduce all those toxins in my body. I've got so much energy. Only thing I do is I drink maybe a cup of coffee in the morning, maybe two, and I'm ready to go. And I find that when you live a healthy lifestyle, you can be more productive in everything you do. And also holding yourself to that high standard when you do it with fitness, it transpires into everything you do in life. How you treat people, how you the self respect you get, how I work my cases. I mean, I'm done with my workouts before most people wake up. I've got all day to work if I have to. I've got all day to focus on it. And when you start your day off with something positive, you start your day off with something that energizes you. It sets the tone for the whole day.
Yeah.
Like I'm not worried. Like if someone, you know, I don't get bothered too much because I know what I do. And so if somebody says something to me, I'm like, well, I know that I'm the guy who wakes up at 4:30 in the morning. There's not much you can say to me because you develop that credibility with yourself because you keep your word to yourself.
Well, I find just over the last 2 years, I just keep getting into it more and more and more. I was working out on Thanksgiving, and the RDV Genesis Health Club was like open that day, and it was buzzing. And I was running into friends, and it was so interesting. When I went to leave, I felt 10 times better than when I walked in. And I felt pretty good because, I sleep and, I eat pretty well. It's not perfect. I'm working on it. It's progress. But it was interesting. I was like, it's so nice to be like with my gym family before I was with my other family and like reframing myself. So then when I went and had Thanksgiving dinner, I had already worked out so hard that day that I'm not piling up my plate with a bunch of mashed potatoes and gravy. It's like, okay, I want all the protein. I want all the vegetables that I made. And it really just frames it. And then especially to have other people that are like cheering you on. So,
Yeah, it's so important. And you see positive people. Like when I wake up in the morning, I go to the gym. I was in there today. I was just looking at all the people. I was like, man, these are people who are there before work, getting up early, and it doesn't matter what time you work out as long as you go work out. I like to go in the morning because it's very hard for me, and I like to push myself to do hard things because then when a hard thing comes up, I'm like, oh. I woke up at 4 this morning, so it can't be that hard. But that type of atmosphere, you build credibility with yourself, and then no one can take that away. The fact that you went on Thanksgiving is a day when a lot of people will take off or use it as an excuse, but you went in there, you put in the work, and you felt good. Not only the endorphins, but you feel good because you did what you said you're going to do. You kept your word to yourself
yeah.
and stuff, and it shows, and it starts showing not only physically, but it starts showing in who you become and how you hold yourself, and people will start recognizing, and people respect other people who are disciplined. I mean, I know I do.
Yeah. And I don't want to give any kind of medical advice to anyone like that, but I struggled for a long time with postpartum depression, like right after having my two kids back to back. And, I've had anxiety over the years and stuff, but I'll tell you in the last 2 years, as I keep increasing my workouts and, keep being more active and all that, and then sleeping and all those other things, I'm off of everything. Like it's so wonderful. You go to the dentist and like they ask me what medications I'm on, and I'm like, none. like I take my supplements and drink my protein shakes, but that's it is my that is what kind of fuels my brain and my soul and all of that. So
And
yeah.
I found that with people, and myself included, when we go out and we push ourselves and we feel productive, we're less likely to feel anxious or depressed. I mean, I've known that, having gone through those feelings myself. But when I'm constantly pushing myself in every direction and stuff like that, I don't have time. And I start feeling good about myself because
Right.
I start seeing results and I start feeling that credibility. If I'm sitting at home all day long, eating whatever I want. And I've done this before and just watching TV and being lazy and watching myself put on weight. which has happened,
Yeah.
I didn't feel good about myself. I really didn't. And I didn't know what was bothering me until I, really looked in the mirror and said, okay, you're the problem. You got to change it and stuff. So,
Yeah. Well, and then here's my question. And then a lot of people say this is like, if someone's listening and they're struggling and they feel like they're too busy to take care of themselves, what would you tell them?
I'm pretty blunt. There's no such thing as too busy. I mean,
Yep.
there's no such thing. I'm at the gym at 5 in the morning. When I was really busy, I used to work at a really big law firm, and I was working 70 hours a week. I'd either go at 5 in the morning. I found time at times to go at my lunch hour or late at night after work, or I double up on the weekends. The weekends I'm not working. There's no such thing as too busy. Too busy means I'm too lazy. That's all it means. I don't buy that. If I can work out at age 51 for 2 hours every single day, run a law practice, be a lawyer, be a father of three. I mean, somebody says they're too busy. That's something they're not. They don't want to know what's going on in my mind when they say that.
Well,
Uh,
I always say there's 168 hours in the week, and it's
yes,
it's about
yes,
it's about
so true.
prioritization.
That is so true. I couldn't agree with you more. That is so true. In 168 hours in a week, if you can't find 3 hours to work out, and then the other thing, somebody says that to me, I was like, you don't need the gym to stay in shape. I've gotten in some of the best shape of my life doing calisthenics, and just getting a dumbbell. I was in India in when I was like 22, visiting for 6 months. There was no gym. I did no cardio. I was about 6% body fat, ripped, but I was doing calisthenics, but I was eating healthy. So
Yes.
that's another part of it. It's not just working out. If you're too busy, then okay, do some exercise at home, get some cheap bands or something like that, but watch your diet. And diet's 80%. If you eat healthy, you don't have to work out that much to stay lean. And if you work out all the time and you don't eat healthy, then you're going to gain weight. That's just how it goes.
Well, I keep in my bedroom, I have like a little cart that has like different bands and different stuff if I really can't make it out. But I like the energy of going to the gym. I'm
Same
one of
here.
those people. And I feel like it's contagious because you're in front of other people. You're gonna want to add the extra 10 pounds or whatever it is. And so I like to go to Genesis. If I can't make it to Genesis, I walk over to the country club gym. And then worst case scenario, I have all my little bands and stuff. So
Yeah, I have a whole home gym. I do cardio at home,
yeah.
but I have a whole home gym, but it's not the same feeling. I have it now in case we ever get another lockdown, because when we had a lockdown, I bought a few equipment and I got it done, but we have a whole, gym over here, and it's very rare when I work out over there because I like the gym. And the other thing is gyms are open almost 24 hours. The timings are fit for people who are busy. They're made for people who are busy. So you can never be too busy,
No,
because the gym's there.
you just got to find a path, make it
Yeah,
happen, put it on your calendar. And then everybody that is around you just needs to know too, like, I can't function until this happens today. like,
that is so
and
true.
then,
That is so true. There is nothing that's going to keep me from the gym. If the family's getting together, I'm going to the gym. If we're going on vacation and there's no gym, I'm not going. I mean, it's just the way. That's just the way it is. I'm not. I'm not going to put myself in that situation because, for me, this this is what I'm addicted to, and I love it, and I see the results, and I see who it makes me, and I like that. And so why would I neglect something that I really like and that makes me feel better about myself?
yeah, I think I think it's awesome. So I have another question. You're very candid online about your journey with sobriety. Do you want to talk a little bit about
No,
that and how
absolutely.
important it is for you?
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, I think that's something that I like to be very open with. About 5.5 years ago, I've been sober almost 10 years. I decided to do away with my anonymity. I decided to come out and talk about it. At first I was scared. I was like, oh my God, I'm a lawyer. What are people going to think? Or I was like, oh my God, my business and stuff like that. Then I said, you know what? People are going to think what they're going to think. Once I came to terms that I'm sober and I'm no longer ashamed of my past, I'm very proud of my recovery. It's the thing I'm most proud of in my life. I thought that I should come out and be open about it so I can help other people. because what you see of me today is not what I was 10 years ago. I was somebody who was struggling. I was somebody who was really scared, really angry, in denial, had all the excuses in the world why I needed to drink or do the things I was doing. And it's a horrible existence. It's not even living. It's barely existing. I was a demon to and a slave to my addiction, and it ruled me. And I couldn't go on living like that. I was watching myself deteriorate. I was watching my health go bad. I was watching myself have all kinds of problems, and the problems just kept getting worse. And I just had to face it and say, I've got to get sober. I don't care what happens. I've got to change. And that was a very hard thing to do because I had to go out and ask for help. And here I am. I had enjoyed a lot of success as a lawyer, modestly speaking. I won some really big cases, gotten a lot of media, coverage and profile. And here I am. I'm the one who needs help. I'm used to helping people. But that was the best thing I ever did for myself because it took a lot of courage. It took a lot of strength to ask for help. And my life changed with sobriety. I mean, it's a life I once could only fantasize about living. And it's a life I dreamed about. And all that chaos that was in my head is gone. I found peace. I really found peace, true peace and true happiness.
Mm.
But I put my sobriety first, and I didn't try and do this on my own. I have a lot of discipline. I can wake up at 4:30 in the morning. I can avoid eating pizza if it's around me, stuff. But my discipline alone couldn't get me sober. I needed help, and I went to AA. And I go to an AA meeting every single day, sometimes two, online. In the morning. I listen to AA when I'm doing cardio, and I work the 12 steps, and that transformed my life. I mean, it really did transform me. It transformed my life, and that's where the positivity comes from. When you see me posting in the morning, you see me, sharing all these posts. That's not something that I'm naturally like. It is some stuff I learned through my journey in sobriety, or a lot of these posts are sayings that come through AA, and I want to share it because every morning I start off my day with praying to God, gratitude, and finding positivity. And then I want to put it out there for other people because somebody may be struggling, and I might just help that one person. And that just the thought of that makes me feel good.
Yeah, I think AA is incredible, incredible program. It's so transformational. I think one of the founders, in fact, is from like my hometown, and they have his childhood
Ohio,
home, Bill.
Bill Wilson, yeah.
Yeah, Bill Wilson. That's it. Yeah, is from my childhood home. But yeah, it's transformational, and I know it's changed the lives of so many people. And I think what's so profound too is when you're going through something so hard in your life, and you're kind of concerned about what other people will think about you, but then the power, and then telling other people what you've been through, probably how many people you've been able to help and change because they feel comfortable. You shared that they can come to you for help and share what's going on. I'm sure that's happened.
That's so true. That's how I got sober. Is I was listening to other people, and when I heard other people talk, and I saw how their life had become, I could first relate to them when they talk about their addiction. I was like, oh, I did that. Oh yeah, I waited for the liquor store to open in the morning and make sure no one was looking. Well, I put a hat on to go buy whatever 6-pack of beer. And I listened to their stories and I could relate to them. But then I saw that what the recovery did for them. And
Mm.
most of all, they have that peace. They're not holding on to resentments anymore. They're not holding on to anger. They're not holding on to fear. And they got this peace in their eyes. And I wanted that so bad. Oh my God. And there's nothing more I wanted than that. Nothing else made a difference to me. Not the money, not the fame, nothing like that. It was that peace. And I listened to what they said. A lot of people are afraid to go to AA because they're like, oh, it's just the fear of change, or there's things you have to do that you don't want to do, like is there certain things on the steps you got to talk about yourself. But I just had to do it, and when I did it, it's like I felt so good. It's like, wow, I used to be stressed out about things that really don't make a difference, And so a lot of things that used to bother me or would have bothered me today, it doesn't bother me. And I live a life where I'm driving my car and I'm listening to the radio and I'm enjoying the drive. There's nothing else going on. It's just me and the road. I'm not thinking about the person who pissed me off back in third grade or whatever. And it's a wonderful life. But I have to stay on top of it, because the old thinking comes back. And that old thinking, the resentments and the anger and those nonsense ego thoughts and all that stuff. And that's what could lead a person to taking a drink. If I'm happy and I'm spiritually fit, I could be in a room full of alcohol and I don't even notice it. I do that all the time. I speak at events, I sponsor events, I go to networking events, and everyone's drinking and I don't even notice it. And I'm perfectly comfortable being there by myself. And there was a time I wasn't. Where, if I didn't have a drink, I was like sweating, I was like nervous. As soon as I have a drink, I'm cool. But I don't
Mm-hmm.
need that anymore. It's like it's freedom. It's real freedom in life.
My goodness. Yeah. What's so profound is I don't think Bill Wilson realized when he founded like AA too, that they have, the 12 steps are applied to, overeating, to obsessive compulsive and so many different things. And it is work too, to go through those 12 steps and live it like on a daily basis. And it also, I think, forces you to think outside of yourself. Again, you showing up on this podcast, you doing the different things, you're giving and you're carrying it forward.
Yeah, I think the 12 steps is a lot of the answers that people were looking for in life. I really do think that, because my gosh, if I didn't have the 12 steps, I don't even know what my life would be like. It's just like I don't take myself so serious. No matter what, no matter if I'm an attorney, no matter what, anything like that, I'm just another bozo on the bus. And I know that. And I like that. So I don't have to take myself so serious. So I don't care so much what people think of me. And
Mhm.
that's freedom. I can just be myself and be myself who I am. That's why, I'm an attorney and I'm not afraid to, talk about my addiction. That's why I'm an attorney. And, if I want to post a picture of me working out, I'm not confined to something, because life's short and I want to enjoy life, and hopefully motivate other people to change themselves, if they can, if something's bothering them, and there's something to change, whether it's the way they eat, if they drink too much, smoke, or whatever. We all can get better if we look at ourselves and take the efforts.
Yeah, and it's never too late to change. You don't have to continue to be mired in the same existence that you've been in. You
That's
can
so true.
write yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. I want to speak a little bit about mindset because obviously it's the performance mindset show. What are some of your tools to stay, calm, centered, and present in moments like and having that mindset when you go into court or you're running your business? Do you have any tips for anyone?
Well, one thing is, I think very important is to let go of the ego, not to make things about myself. If something comes up, first thing I look at it is, do I have to, I can't control other people. I can't.
Hmm.
And we talked about this earlier, but I can control my response. And that's where the power is. So if something comes up, do I have to respond? And if I have to respond,
Mm,
do I have to respond in a negative way? And one thing I've learned is to walk away from fights. When I was younger, I had to prove myself, and how can someone talk to me like that? They disrespected me. Now it doesn't really bother me, and I mean, I'll give you an example. I had a guy. I was at the gym and I was working on some leg equipment. He came up and he started yelling at me, screaming. I thought he was joking at first, and he's telling me I'm on the equipment too long. Didn't even ask me. I was like, "Dude, you want to work in?" He's like yelling at me and all that stuff. And for a second there, the old me wanted to come out, but I said,
right.
"God, don't do it, don't do it," and stuff like that. Calm down, Raj. And so I looked at him. I was like, I got one more. I'm going to spray it on the equipment and you can have it. And he kept yelling at me. And I stopped and I said, look, whatever you're going through, I hope I hope you get through it. And I'm going to say a prayer for you. I did my set, walked away, and I said a prayer for him. My God, I felt so good. I felt amazing. I felt like I was floating, because That guy invited me into a fight. And if I would have gotten into it, we would have gotten into a physical fight, but I would have gotten into a verbal altercation with him all day long. I would have been carrying that guy in my mind and thinking, well, I should have said this. So, I'd be thinking I said this because he said this and stuff like that. But now I just walked away and I felt like $1 million, because I overcame, a situation that would normally take me down. And I walked away and I said a prayer for him and I felt so good. And when I see the guy now, there's not that conflict, because if I would have gotten in
Yeah.
conflict with him, I'd see him and there'd be the edge and all that stuff. Now I see the guy and it makes me happy because he tried to bring out the worst in me and I rose above the occasion. So, things are going to happen in life. Things are going to happen. And, it's not always going to be, the way we want it. And people are
Right.
going to react a certain way or things may not happen the way we expected it to. One thing I do look at is I look at God a lot. And I look to faith. I can only do my part, but whatever the results are going to be up to God. And that takes the pressure off of me. So I'll
Mhm.
do what I need to do. And let's just say things didn't turn out the way I wanted them to turn out. They turn out the way they should have turned out. And I'm going to be okay whether it happens the way I want it to happen or it doesn't happen. I'm going to be okay either way. And that's a very peaceful way to go through life. It's letting go of the ego, letting go of control. And one thing I learned is I only have control over so much things. And if I try to control everything around me, I'm going to be stressed out. And that's where the anxiety comes in.
Yes.
So when I say, do I have control over this? If the answer is no, I accept it. That's how it is. I watch the news and things are going on and I may not like it. Can I change it? No. Okay, what can I change? I can change my reaction. Okay, I can change this. I can go do this, do something productive, spend time with my kids or something like that. And that keeps me very humble and it keeps me happy. And, in life, I'll say this, that people say money buys you happiness. There was a time when I was in addiction, I went out on vacation and I was doing very well for myself financially. I was in my 30s and a partner at this very prestigious law firm. And I was staying in these nice hotels, in Dubai and India. These places were like palaces. But I was so riled up, angry, frustrated, and the littlest things would piss me off. I didn't enjoy it at all.
Mm.
I had no enjoyment. There was so much luxuries around me and stuff like that. And I was just battling in here and I wasn't happy. And that's, when I got sober, I realized, I wasn't happy. But, today I could go to a pond and I can take some bread, feed some ducks and feed some fish, nothing, very simple. And I could be in so much peace. So,
Mm.
happiness, I think, comes from within us and it comes from the quality of our thoughts. And I try to look for things in the morning to be positive about. So when things come up later in the day, I'm already at a calm mind. So I think that really has helped me a lot.
Yeah, I really take a lot from what you just said, but, particularly again, starting your day in a positive way and feeding positive thoughts. And then again, things that are negative, things you can't control, you just got to let it go. Like the situation that you had with the gentleman in the gym, instead of you engaging and it becomes this whole pissing contest, and then you guys are just trying, just it just deteriorates. You're just pray for him, move on, just let it go, and you can move on, and then you're not harboring all of that energy.
It's
It's all about the energy.
it's so much about the energy. It really is, and also, I mean, I think we talked about this earlier. When we're talking about work, is who you surround yourself with
Hmm.
is very important. I mean, if somebody's coming to me, always, I don't mind people coming to me and venting. I think that's very healthy to
Right.
vent to try and look for solutions to the problem. But if somebody wants to live in the problem, gossip, vent, talk negative, I keep my boundaries. I think keeping boundaries with negative people, toxic people is very important for one's peace. I don't care if it's your best friend from high school or your parents. If they're toxic, I'm not saying mine are. I'm not saying any of those people in my life are,
Yep.
but I'm just saying in general, if somebody's toxic and negative, they're going to bring you down.
Yeah.
And you want to so I want to surround myself with people who are really, pushing themselves, to get somewhere in life because that motivates me. And when somebody's going, working hard, they're not going to be. envious of other people's success. They're going to clap other people's success. And those are the type of people I want to be around with because I can uplift and they can uplift me because I believe this iron sharpens iron, you know?
Oh, oh yeah, I love it. Like, yeah, when it's interesting because I'm in commercial real estate, and there's a lot of people that do commercial real estate, but I mean, I want other people to win. There's so much like abundance in Orlando, and we've grown so much that there's plenty for everybody, and there's plenty of cases to go. There's plenty for everybody, and we don't need to have this like fixed mindset. And yeah, and it's awesome.
And the other thing I learned is like, like you just brought up a great point, in life, in your job, at least in my job, one of my mindset is I don't compete against other people.
Mhm.
I have competitors in the market and stuff, and I'm friends with them, and we learn
Right.
from each other. The people who have my mindset, I'll go out and, learn from them and and I'll share, things I learn and stuff like that. But I compete against myself and every day I try and be better than I was yesterday. And that way I never lose. If I'm even 1%, half a percent better than I was yesterday or last year, I'm winning in life. I don't need to be better than anyone else. I'm not there to compete against anyone else. I want everyone to succeed. And, I just have to be better than I was. And I've seen progress. It's progress,
Mhm.
not perfection. I don't care to be perfect. I just want to be better and
Oh yeah.
continue to try and improve in some way, shape, or form.
Right. Oh, yeah, I love that progress over perfection and keeping that top of mind. There was a period of time where I wanted everything to be perfect. And again, then with the perfection comes anxiety and all the other things. So,
Control, and stuff like that, which,
woo.
yeah.
So, well, this has been great. Is there anything that we did not talk about that you wanted to share with our audience?
Um, Not in particular. I think we covered a lot. I just think, with anyone, if anyone's out there is going through a hard time, struggling with anything like that, we've all been through it. And I think a lot of times our struggles, if I didn't struggle the way I did, I wouldn't be where I am today. Overcoming obstacles makes us stronger. Overcoming challenges is what makes us who we are. So, we could be going through some hard times. And I went through some hard times in my addiction. I almost lost everything and hit some rock bottoms, and there were scary times, but, I kept getting up. I didn't quit and I didn't play the victim. Instead of playing the victim, I looked at myself and said, "You dummy, what are you doing? Why, how did this happen? You had to have been a part of it." And, doing an honest assessment, that's the hardest thing to do in life. But when I think a person does that, that's how you can get better. And in life, there's so many. It's infinite how much you can improve. Even if you improve mentally, spiritually, emotionally, that's an improvement. And in life, what everyone wants is peace and happiness. I mean, that to me is the greatest wealth. It means more to me than driving a nice car or
Yeah.
anything like that. And if I want it, I've got to keep myself in check and not get invited into unnecessary fights with my ego, not focus on what's going on in Washington and stuff. If I can't change it, I got to accept it. There's things I can do. I can vote. I can be involved in different committees and stuff like that. But I don't have to spread negativity.
Right.
And that's I think what leads to a peaceful, happy life.
Yeah. Peace and happiness. I mean, and then what do you need to do to get that? God, drown out that negativity and stay focused on the things that you can control. I think it's so powerful. So this has been great.
It's
So,
awesome. Yeah, I really enjoyed this.
and if people want to get a hold of you, what's the best way? Is it LinkedIn or through your website?
Through my website, which
Yeah.
is Joshi, Joshi law. If they ever need any legal help, they can contact me at 407 Always look me up on Facebook, Rajan Joshi, or on Instagram, Rajan, Rajan, attorney. I'm an defense attorney, so yeah, I'm pretty
You're pretty
accessible.
discoverable.
Huh?
You're pretty discoverable.
I'm accessible. I am very accessible. I make myself accessible. So.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Well, no, this has been great. I know
Thank
this is
you,
really
Amy.
valuable to everyone that tunes in. And so, with that, I'd like to thank my listeners for tuning into another episode of the Performance Mindset Show. If you enjoyed today's conversation, be sure to follow the show and share it with someone who's ready to grow. You can find more insights, resources, and details about my book, From Perfect to Real, at amycalandrino.com. Until next time, keep investing in yourself, your business, and your mindset.